Hello to sorry, let me read. Hello, this is Films for the very first time with Casey and Jordan. My name is Jordan, and with me as always is Casey McGeorge.
Hey, you guys.
Oh,
How
something
is it going,
different.
everybody?
Something different. Um
I couldn't
Doing
help
good.
myself with that one.
Yeah, it's good. It's going good. Uh uh yeah, I mean this is our third third episode here. The first time that we've had somebody pick a second time, and this was Casey's pick. And Casey, what are we watching, or what are
We
we
are,
reacting to watching?
you were watching for the very first time the classic from 1985, The Goonies.
Yeah, never had watched it.
That surprises me. Like, this seemed like it would be a movie that would have been right up your alley. Maybe it's the age difference, and I get that that might have a little to do with it. We'll talk about that in a little bit, I guess, but
Mhm.
I figured like this would have been one of your kind of movies.
It was funny. I was just hanging out with my friend before this, and I told him about our show and what I was watching this time, and he said he had just watched it for the first time like last year as well. So pretty
Wow.
interesting. Yeah. Yeah, he was born a year after me. He's also, for the first time, like last year or 2 years ago, watched Lord of the Rings. So right now, what brought it up was that he's rewatching it, Lord of the Rings, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna be like, my buddy has never seen it before, and then I was like, and we're doing a podcast about this type of stuff, and I said I'm watching the Goonies right now. Oh, fun fact: he just watched Pulp Fiction not that long ago. He did not like it either. So
Like I said, Tarantino's an acquired taste. So
not to spoil
20,
the Pulp Fiction episode.
20 or 30 years from now, there's gonna be people and kids who haven't seen the Infinity Saga, or
Yeah,
who are watching the original Iron Man or watching Endgame and everything for the very first time. Like, and it's
true.
like they're it's gonna be way different for them because they can do like I did last year, a couple years ago, and do the whole thing like in a couple sittings or whatever, and like binge through it, as compared to having to wait like this 12 years for this whole saga to go through.
Yeah, yeah. So tell me a little bit about the Goonies to set us up here.
Alrighty, so The Goonies was released on June 7th, 1985. It is directed by Chris Columbus, who did the first two Harry Potter movies. He also directed Rent and the Percy Jackson series.
Gremlins too.
Written by Steven Spielberg, who did the story. I don't think I need to explain who Steven Spielberg is. If I do, I'm not really sure what you're doing listening to this podcast. You might
Yeah,
want
and
to
if
go do
people
some
wonder
research.
what
Come on back.
story means, it's like he probably came up with the idea of having these kids looking for the pirate thing, and then Chris writes this actual script is what that means.
And Richard Donner, who was involved with Superman 2, the Lethal Weapon series.
Original
Uh,
Superman as well, 1978.
One of my all-time favorite Christmas movies, Scrooged. He wrote the screenplay. It is starring Sean Astin, Corey Feldman. I want to make sure I get his name right. Kiwi Kwan, who
Mm-hmm.
recently won the Best Supporting Actor for Everything, Everywhere, All at Once, and Jeff Cohen, who plays Chunk, who is now an agent and entertainment lawyer, who got a shout out during Kiwi Kwan's
Mm.
speech at the Academy Awards, calling him his Goonie brother for life. It also stars a very young Josh Brolin in one of
Yeah,
his very first roles, possibly his first. So we get to see the origin story of Thanos. See, after this, he grew a little bit and became the Mad Titan, and then went on to take away half the world.
yeah.
It let's see, had a budget of $19 million, and it
That's a
grossed 100.
steal
This
today.
is also in 1985,
I
right?
know.
A budget of $19 million, which a movie like this you're not making for anything under like $100 million today, probably, if not more.
Oh, yeah, most movies today, like what even the Jennifer Lawrence comedy that just came out was like 45 million.
But I mean, with everything like with everything that's involved in this, with like the
Yeah.
pirate ship and the adventure they go on, and it grossed 125 million worldwide. Then became eventually became a cult classic. Real quick, one quick note. In 2017, it was selected to be included in the National Film Registry for being culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant. I wholeheartedly agree with that.
Yeah, so we had yeah, this thing came out
So,
85.
where were you when this came out originally?
Like I said for Airplane, not even a thought in my parents' mind at this point. They were in high school in 85. So I
I keep
was
forgetting how young you are, man. Ah,
32, not too young, but um yeah, so I was born in 91. But, again, it doesn't really affect much in the sense of like I want to reiterate like Back to the Future is my favorite film and that's the same year, right? But that also had significance to my family. That was like one of their first dates together was Back to the Future. And so they loved those movies. They had them on VHS. I grew up watching them as a kid. I don't think we ever had the Goonies on VHS. So again, it wasn't kind of like Pulp Fiction in the sense of it was never like in the house, and I don't think my parents were like as big on it. I don't know what their thoughts are on it actually, but I don't think it was ever like big enough for them to either own or watch a lot. If we did own it, they probably didn't watch that much, and I never really caught wind of it. Like I did. And here's the thing too, like I know my cousin grew up with this movie, and that's my mom's brother, right? So I do think that there was some like so I assume my mom has seen it. I just don't know like I'll have to ask them their thoughts on it at some point. But yeah, I think I can see the VHS case too. But I just don't know if we had it or if that was at like my cousin's house.
it could have been it could have been like a blockbuster rental too.
Yeah,
I'm sure
yeah.
you might have seen it on the shelf at Blockbuster once it was released there.
And I had never until recently, I had no clue what it was even about. Like I knew it was about kids, but I had no idea it was about a pirate thing until like a couple of years ago, honestly.
So 1987 or 1985 rather, 7 years old. Very young me was a huge wrestling fan, and so in the movie, Cyndi Lauper, there's a video that goes along with the movie called "Goonies Are Good Enough." It's actually just titled "Good Enough," but the record label Warner Brothers and everything got involved and wanted the name in there. Blah blah blah. It is the most. The acting in the video is totally horrendous. Let's not act like it's not, right. It is, but it is. This is in the middle of what was called the Rock and Wrestling era, where Vince McMahon teamed up with Cyndi Lauper. This was around the time of WrestleMania 1. WrestleMania 1, where it was the inaugural one. Yeah, that happened early this year, March 31st of 1985. Cyndi Lauper was heavily involved in that, along with a wrestler called Wendy Richter. She plays in the music video. She works with Cyndi Lauper. In the video, there's Captain Lou Albano. There's the Iron Sheik. There's Classy Freddie Blassie. There's the Fabulous Moolah. There's Nikolai Volkov. There's Rowdy Roddy Piper. And there's an appearance by Andre the Giant. And before I watch these movies Sunday morning before we do our recordings. So I have the disc. I put the HD Blu-ray in, or the good one. Unfortunately, that doesn't have like the deleted scenes or audio commentary.
Really?
I'm noticing that a lot with a lot of the. So a lot of them come with two discs in there: the Blu-ray and then the high definition or the HD with HDR and everything. Blu-ray. Those don't have anything on. Maybe because the movie's so high quality, it takes up so much space.
I think also they just know that they're not like I feel like special features are not as big nowadays
But
too.
they're still on. It's still on the Blu-ray, and it's still on the
Yeah,
old
yeah.
DVD I have. So I watched the music video. I had to take that out when the movie was over. Put the regular Blu-ray in so I could watch the video. And then I got sad because, with the exception of Wendy Richter, all of those wrestlers have passed away.
Wow.
And they're all gone. With the Iron Sheik just passing away a couple months ago.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, she was when Cyndi Lauper was heavily tied in with the WWE at the time, which helped then the WWF become even more massively popular than it was. They were all over MTV and everything. And the actors from the Goonies were in the music video. It also had a little unknown group called the Bangles, who played like female pirates in the music video.
Wow.
Yeah, so there's like as you go down rabbit holes with a lot of these movies and you start looking up these things, you can find out some really really weird facts about it.
Yeah.
I don't I can't remember. I might have seen this in the theater because at the time being 7 years old, back then in the 80s, when summertime hit, parents were pretty eager to get their kids out of the house and get away from them for the whole summer so they could do adult things while you were gone. Who knows what it was? So like they would send you to go like with grandmothers or grandfathers and aunts and uncles or other people who had kids for the summer, or you would go out to summer camps or these daytime summer camps and in these places. And one of the things I remember doing was I remember seeing the Princess Bride through one of these like daytime summer camps where they basically they would go on like a Tuesday or Wednesday because they're taking a gaggle of like 50 kids.
Yeah, yeah.
So they would get like a matinee price, right? They'd probably rent out the theater. Nobody's really in 1985 is going to see a movie on a Tuesday afternoon at a theater, right? So the theater probably rented out to them for a decent price. They just got to buy the popcorn and all the other stuff, right? And then you can get the counselors get to get out of the heat and away from bugs and everything for a couple hours, and kids get to go see a movie that they want to see. So I remember seeing The Princess Bride that way. I might have seen The Goonies that way. I definitely remember it being rented and seeing it from on VHS or possibly even Betamax if that was still around at the time. And I remember seeing
Wow.
like watching it on HBO and stuff. So yeah, this is as a kid of the '80s. This is definitely part of my childhood.
Yeah. So let me see. What else do I have listed here? Yeah, yeah. I guess we dive right into the film discussion then. So
It
this
takes
movie,
place in Astoria, Oregon.
yes, yep, and they apparently are called the Goonies because it's the Goon Docks area of Astoria, Oregon,
Yes.
where they're going to be expanding a country club. Um, but yeah, so they're foreclosing on all the homes. But as that's going on, it opens up actually with a pretty dark scene in the prison where the Fratellis are
Yeah.
escaping, and he's acting like he hung himself and beats up the cop and gets out of there.
The Fratellis are very loosely based on Ma Barker and the Barker Boys.
Oh,
You might
okay.
be asking, who are Ma Barker and the Barker Boys? If you remember DuckTales,
Yep.
the Beagle Boys are also very loosely based on Ma Barker and the Barker Boys. She is a group of convicts and various things from the early 20th century. The mother was the leader of the gang, and she had several children. They were all in a life of crime and all had some horrible ends, but they are very loosely based on factual peoples.
That is interesting. I did not know that. Yeah, so it kind of starts off with this chase, and I will say here, the music by Dave Grusson. I really like the score here. This kind of like theme song as the chase is going on. It was kind of catchy.
I have to say, I think this is another one. The score throughout the movie fits it really well.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I will admit, as I talk about a lot of this throughout A lot of it could be nostalgia play for me, right? Like I'm not gonna lie, like I remember this is one of my all time favorite movies. Spoiler alert for later in the podcast, right? Obviously, I'm pretty sure everybody will be able to tell I like the movie. I did pick it.
If you're watching the YouTube, he's got his Goonies shirt on too.
Yes, I wore this. I will get comments when I wear this out every now and then. I've got like Rocky Road chants
Oh, nice.
or Baby Ruth or various other things. And even one time walking down the street, someone from across the street or saw it just yelled out what I said in the beginning of the podcast. Hey, you guys. And it makes me laugh. So as I say, like, I might, I enjoyed the score and I thought it fit the movie very well. It could be it's a product of the 80s and it was part of that time, or it could just be the fact that it was something that I just have so much nostalgia for, like I can't turn away from it.
Yeah, so it starts out with this chase, and what we'll kind of learn is really the only one to see this chase is Chunk, and nobody believes him because he apparently is the boy who cries wolf.
He's been telling some tall tales throughout his time.
Even when he calls the cops later, we get a nice reference to the Gremlins,
Yes, okay, that
which
was
was
one
a
of my
Columbus
facts for later.
movie,
Yeah,
you
the
know, where
Spielberg, another Spielberg one there too. Yeah,
yeah, where they say like, "Oh, this is like the time you called in about those little creatures or something."
who multiply when you get them wet. Yep,
Yes,
yep.
yep.
And I think there was a gremlin somewhere in the. I saw it somewhere. There was a gremlin that was on blah, 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 action figure that's seen in Mikey's room, but that
Oh,
room
interesting.
was that room was an entire horrible pigsty. So I'm not sure how anybody recognized
Yeah,
him
how
from
long
in that
ago was
room.
Gremlins? Just the year before. Huh. Pretty interesting.
But this is where we meet a lot of our main characters. This is where you meet Data.
Mm-hmm.
Ewan Kwan, let me say this right. Kiwei Kwan's character, who is into inventing gadgets and various things,
Yep.
which none of them ever turn out right, but it's so hilarious. It's so great. This is where we meet Mikey. This is where we meet Chunk, who like you said, is into telling tall tales, who smashes his pizza and his milkshake against the window as he's watching the car
Yeah.
chase. Man, as someone who enjoys a good pizza and a good milkshake, that kind of made me tear up a little bit there. But the Fratellis eventually get away. There's a shootout. They eventually get away, and old Ma Fratelli there has a great idea. Which I don't know why she has her son throw the truck in 4-wheel drive. Like the shifter's literally right next to her.
Right, right.
But they end up in the middle of a 4-wheel drive race on the beach so they can get away. Have you do you go on YouTube a lot?
Occasionally.
Have you ever heard of CinemaSins?
I've heard of them, never actually watched any of their stuff.
It's it's a pretty good YouTube series. Their tag is "No movie is without sin," right? So they will go through a movie and they give sins out. So like the fact that there might be reading, like you might have to read something in the beginning of the movie, like in the beginning of time, blah blah blah. Like reading and various things or stuff, and they'll hit things if it just doesn't make any sense whatsoever. They did one on the Goonies, which kind of upset me because to me this movie should be without sin,
Mm-hmm.
but there's another one and it was like, why did Ma Fratelli have her son shift the vehicle into 4-wheel drive when all she had to do was reach her hand right over there? And it assigns a sin to that, and it goes through the movie, and it's anywhere from like 10 to 15, 20, 25 minutes,
Mm-hmm.
depending on how many sins it is. And it's a pretty good series. They've done some for TV shows and like music videos and commercials and things. Pretty good. It's a pretty good series. And they put movies, they put little things together. So yeah, this was one of their probably, I think they're more popular ones that was on there a while back.
Interesting. Okay, so I have a question here.
Okay.
Corey Feldman's character, Mouth. How does he get into? He knocks on the door, right, of the family home.
Oh, I know where you're
But
going with this one.
there's the gate that's closed that they have to do the thing to open it. So how does he get in
The
there?
Rube Goldberg device there.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, I think he just opened it up and just
Yeah.
walked in, right?
That or jumped
Because
over or
I
something.
think the latch is right there. You can just like reach your
Uh
hand over on the latch, like. But yeah, okay. So Chunk shows up and
he's like
he wants
begging
to
to be
come
let
in.
in. That's why I was thinking like,
Yeah.
how did Mouth get in?
So first of all, they make him do the truffle shuffle, which is a little giggle worthy, but body shaming a young kid is not funny,
This is
right? Like
something I
it's
have heard about. Was
yeah,
this
the
thing?
truffle
It's one of the
shuffle.
things I was aware of. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a little giggle worthy, but once again, body shaming anybody in general is not cool, especially body shaming a child. Like it's not cool.
By the way, the guy who plays Chunk now is like lost all the weight. Like if you
Yeah,
look him up, he
that's
looks really.
uh, that's what I was saying. That's the
Yeah,
guy
yeah.
who is the entertainment lawyer, and he drew up everything and got
You can see it in his face, like that it's him, but like he looks totally different.
yeah. So there's this horrible Rube Goldberg device where it's like he has to pull they pull a string. Sean Astin's character pulls a string, has a bowling ball go down a thing, and it's there's a balloon that inflates at some point. It scares a chicken, which lays an egg,
Yeah. So what
which turns
happens
on a
if it doesn't
sprinkler.
scare the chicken enough to lay the egg? It just nothing happens
I
then.
don't know. And the thing is, like, that was also one of the things in Cinema Sins. Like, wouldn't it have just been quicker for him to walk out the door and go open the gate? Because I think later when the guys come to drop off the paperwork, either all of that stuff is gone.
Hmm.
Like I can't remember, but when the people from the foreclosure company come to drop off the paperwork for their dad, either everything is gone, or old Thanos there just walks down to the gate and picks it
Yeah, I
up.
think that's what he did.
He
I
does,
will
but like
say,
instead of just like doing all that to set it up.
I will say though, like I would push back on Cinema Sins on that because I think it does set up the booby traps in the cave later,
It
and
it,
how he knows that it's going to lead to something and all that.
it,
So
it does.
yeah,
It does go along with the movie, but like also there's the aspect of okay, once you do that, now you have to set everything back up.
back up. Yeah, yeah.
So they go in there. They're I don't even know how old. It's okay. So Josh Brolin's character's he just failed his driving test, so that gives him 16. I know in some of these places you can be like 15 and a half with a driver's license, but I'm gonna say between 16 and 17.
Yeah, I was thinking these kids are maybe like 12 and 13.
Yeah,
Because they
teenage like
mentioned like eighth grade, seventh grade. They mentioned like those type of
somewhere in
grades.
there. Yeah, so they're right at the cusp of like teenagerdom. So they're and they're talking about how the next day everything's gonna be foreclosed on, and they're gonna figure out they gotta figure out what they're due. Data's family's supposed to be moving to Detroit, which Mouth brings up at the time had the highest murder rate in the country. Yeah, way to go, way to make him feel good about where he's moving to.
Yeah.
Their mom shows up with a lovely woman who doesn't speak any English. It's one of those things you probably would not go along today, but that's okay. This was once again 1980s product of its time. So Mouth translates and does a horrible translation job
Yeah,
for
well,
his mom.
he sabotages on purpose
Yeah,
here.
that's what I mean by horrible.
Yeah,
Not that
yeah.
his Spanish was okay, but it was the fact of like everything he tells her like as the mom is like these are where the cleaning supplies are. We
That's
want
what I
this,
was
this, blah blah
wondering
blah.
when it sets it up. I was like, is he just saying that to impress the mom and he doesn't actually know it, or will he be translating things
Will he be
wrong?
needing
Yeah,
Spanish later in the movie?
yeah.
Another fun fact I saw: the lady who played the lady who's going to help them pack, obviously did know English, but she helped do the translation for Corey Feldman and to do it phonetically so that he could say those things
Oh, nice.
in the movie. So yeah, it was very very well done. The So they go through, tells her about if she does a bad job, they're gonna lock her up in a closet with cockroaches, and various other things, and she's scared. So the mom goes away because she's got other things to do. Plus, she needs help packing because she has a cast on her arm. They little foreshadowing there. They get to the attic, and the mom says, "Don't go in there." Blah blah blah. It's just full of junk. So what's the first thing that happens when you tell a bunch of teenage kids not to go in someplace, and then you leave? They go in the attic. While they're up there, before that, we find out Chunk is very clumsy as well.
Yeah, I like when Mikey wants to break open the thing and he just
Yeah.
hands it to him and he starts counting down. He's like, one,
So,
two.
yeah. Before that, he knocks over a statue of David, and he catches it, but then he puts it back and it falls. And a special part of the statue falls off, and then they have to figure out how to put it back. Blah, blah,
Doesn't
blah.
Mikey say it's his mom's favorite part of the statue or
Yeah, he
something?
says it's his mom's favorite part. Corey Feld mouth is like, "Of course it is. If it wasn't, you wouldn't be here." And gives like a little Groucho Marx
Yes, yeah.
little wiggle. So while they're up there, they're looking around. There's like a bunch of pirate stuff up there. I don't know if his dad like was just a collector working in a museum or something.
I think he works at the Historical Society because when they say hi to him, I thought that's what the building said. So I think
It
that's
could
how
be.
he has this stuff.
So they have like pirate stuff that somehow fits not Mikey, somehow fits Chunk. I don't know why, but there's like a little pirate jacket that fits him, which is kind of weird to have, unless we have small people pirates or little people pirates. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
They're exploring. Weird thing. They open up the attic, and there's a light bulb that's just kind of like turning on and off on its own. So has that thing just been kind of like sitting there, going on and off for years, since who knows when the last time they were in the
Yeah,
attic was?
I guess. I think what Josh Brolin's character does too is he just kind of like
Twisted.
rescrews it in better,
Yeah.
and it stays on.
There is a light bulb that has been lit since the early 1900s that is still working somewhere out there. But yeah, this one, I don't know. There's a bunch of weird science stuff up there. There's those balls with lightning that go to the edge of it and blah, blah, blah. Anyway, they
Oh
find
yeah.
a pirate treasure map. Like you said, he gives it to Chunk. He counts down to 5. Chunk drops it, falls open. They pull the map out. That's where we get the story of the pirate, One-Eyed Willie, who apparently has a treasure. Then he gets chased by the British and this whole armada. Takes his pirate crew into these set of caves. They blow the cave up, and Willie's trapped in there. So they start digging and everything, and blah, blah, blah. They set a bunch of booby traps. And that's where the cave and the treasure is. Chunk has probably the greatest line in the movie. Wait a minute. If he did all that, how did the map and how did the story get out? I asked my dad the same thing. Come to find out, it's probably just like a bedtime tale, right? One of those little stories people tell their kids and various things. We're on the coast of Oregon, so there's probably like a lot of historical stuff, go along with that. Eventually, Mikey decides, oh man, if we can find the treasure, we can save the neighborhood, and we don't have to. The houses don't get foreclosed on. We don't have to leave. They find another frame that has the story, along with the headline of FDR and the New Deal. So it tells you when it was, from the 1930s, I think, 40s.
Yeah, that
something like
Chester
Chester Copperpot,
Copperpot was
who says he found.
missing.
Yeah, he found he had the secret, and he went looking for the treasure, and he hasn't been seen since. So they get together. The young kids decide they're gonna go find it. Mikey does some translations on the map, kind of gives them a general gist of where to go. They tie up Josh Brolin's character, which is probably where the origin story of Thanos comes into play. He's got one of those.
Looked like it
spring
hurt
things.
too.
Yeah, he's
Yeah.
got one of those spring things that you would pull apart because this is the 1980s, and people wear sweatpants and shorts over their sweatpants and headbands. when they're working out and things. Um, we end up, the kids end up going off. Eventually, mom comes back. She's mad because Mikey has asthma. He's one of those kids that gets sick all the time, and his mom's scared to death he's gonna die out there. Plus,
Yeah, tells him not to go outside.
it's the
It's
coast
gonna
of
rain or
Oregon and
something.
it's raining, so he sends him after. He sends a big brother after him. Eventually, we meet up with the two ladies from the film, which gotta admit, this could have been the very start of my fascination with redheads, with Carrie Green. I don't know, but this might be about the time that might have came into my mind. She's a very attractive young lady at the time. Eventually, they end up at some weird, decrepit summer restaurant that's like out of commission. Looks like it hasn't been in commission in like 50 years.
Yeah, but it's just a summer place, right? That's what they said.
Yeah, and that's where the Fratellis are hiding out. They hear gunshots, but that's where the map and this little device that they have is telling them to go. So they get into the house or they get into the restaurant. Eventually, the Fratellis come out because they probably just killed somebody back there. They scare the kids away, but they drive off. The kids go back inside. They have to get to the lowest point so they can start exploring caves. Eventually, they do.
Yeah, they go through the fireplace and they leave Chunk in the freezer, by the way. And they're just like, and then even when he does get out of there, they're like, go call the police. And I'm like, why are you sending one guy, one kid to go call the cops? Just bring him along with you.
And in all fairness, why are you sending the chubbiest kid? He doesn't move very fast. Like, come on.
Right, right.
And let's not look. His sense of smell is impeccable. Like he smelled pizza and pepperoni pizza. He smelled ice cream in a freezer that's sealed up, and it's like a bunch of Ben and Jerry's, and that's how they find the dead body.
Yeah.
The brother tracks. How did the brother track him down? He didn't know where they were going.
I don't know. And also hitting Data Sisters
Yeah,
and that man, this was the guy is such a jerk bully that he like grabs onto him and just drives him off the cliff. I was like, wow, they're really going for it
yeah,
here.
attempted murder. Yeah, way to go, guy. But he's rich. His dad, they belong to the country club, so his dad's got money, so nothing would have happened to him. So eventually, but the Fratellis come back. So they had the only way out through the caves, right? So they go down through the fireplace. They go down there. Eventually, they go through some booby traps. They go. There's some wacky adventures down here. Now, here's my thought. After I've seen this movie so many times, too many times to count, how has this never been turned into a ride or attraction at like either Disney or Universal Studios or something?
Yeah, who produced this? Warner Brothers? That's probably why. But
At any theme park. How has this
yeah,
not
I
been
mean they
an
could
attraction
sell that.
somewhere?
Yeah. I'm surprised actually that there's no sequel.
We will have a discussion about that here shortly.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
coming up. But think about like going through, even if it's just one of those crappy not crappy, but one of those roller coaster ones where you're on the roller coaster and you go through the thing, and then eventually there's water because they go down this water slide. You end up at a pirate ship, and then you end up, you have to get off the pirate. Like this could have been an attraction. How has nobody made this an attraction, man? Like, come on. This hurts me to my soul. Let's see. They find a printing press with some counterfeit $50 bills,
Yeah.
which they think is real. They end up finding Chester Copperpot, Chester Copperpot.
Mm-hmm.
I want
With
to
his
say
Joe
Cobble,
DiMaggio card in
Lou
the
Gehrig.
wallet.
Lou Gehrig.
Oh, Lou Gehrig, that's
I
right.
want to say Cobblepot, but that's the penguin.
Yeah.
Who a boulder apparently fell on him, so he didn't make it through one of the booby traps, right? Unfortunately.
Yeah.
But lucky for him, he had his wallet and his ID on him, the Lou Gehrig baseball card. And he's got a bunch of candles with it. Like, how lucky is that?
Candles and dynamite. Yeah.
Uh, they go through. There's. They end up. Mikey has his first kiss.
Yeah.
Because his
She
older
mistakes. Yeah. She
him for his
mistakes.
older brother. Which I thought it was funny in there when he was like, "This is the little boy's room. That's the little girl's room. Where are you going? Oh, this is the men's room. What do the other two do? Oh yeah, we're going to the men's room. Dude, just go pee against the wall. Like, come on."
Right. Right.
So they end up. Dad almost falls to his death at one point, but that's how they end up in another part of the caves.
See, that's when one of his things does work.
Yes, his
The
teeth,
chattering teeth thing.
which come back later. They worked later as well. They did.
Hmm.
But what else do we have? They end up running for the Fratellis. End up chasing after them. Meanwhile, what we don't know is Chunk is left in. He's left in the freezer. He manages to get out. Right. He makes it out the door. And he goes to a car. And what happens? He's trying to tell the guy what's going on. He's talking trash about the Fratellis. And what happens? He's caught by one of the Fratellis. Which, how could he not see him through the window?
Yeah.
Like, that was another thing in Cinema Sins. Like, wait, so he couldn't recognize the guy until he turned the light on? Like, so he gets taken back, and they want to know what's going on. Fratellis end up chasing after the kids. He gets tied up and locked in a closet with a physically and mentally deformed individual, which is one of the Fratelli's brothers, named Sloth. Man, there's so many things that probably wouldn't work if we redid this movie too.
Yeah.
Sloth is basically tied up to a chair watching old movies, because back in the 80s, all you could watch was movies from like the 50s and 60s a lot on TV in black and white. So
Especially because they didn't have VHS until more mid 80s. Like, I think right after this or right around this time.
yeah,
So, people would only watch what was on cable or, that was it.
Kung Fu movies on Channel 9 when I was a kid. But him and Chunk become great friends, and they end up chasing after the Fratellis and the other kids. The kids end up coming to a piano made out of bones. Which,
Yes. I like this scene. This was something I did not see
oh
coming
yeah,
here.
you didn't know about this before?
No, and I thought it was funny because in these 80s movies, it's always this way, right? Where like, oh yeah, I took piano lessons as a kid. Let me jump on there and do this. Like each person usually has some sort of skill that propels them further
Yeah.
into the thing.
Mike Mouth with his speaking Spanish so he can translate the
Yes.
map.
Data with his tools,
And his
right?
inventions, yeah. So before that, how did the pirates manage to make all this stuff, and how many years did it take them to do all this?
Yeah, that is well, I guess they went until well, yeah, I mean, did they have food with them when they got lost? That cuz otherwise they had all of this time to do it before they die from lack of food.
Digging. So you got all the digging, moving of boulders, setting up booby traps.
Yeah, yeah.
You got to have rope and twine and stuff to make blades. Then I guess as the other people died, you can use their bones to do the bone thing. But where the hell they get the stuff to make an organ from?
True, true.
And then they gotta set the organ up so if you play the wrong notes, like the walls behind you or the floor behind you collapses. Like, this is some genius level stuff going on here.
Yeah.
And Mikey is gonna have the greatest dad jokes when he gets older because he has the best one here. So basically, they're at the piano. Like I said, if you play the right notes, there's a drawbridge that eventually will come down, and it says on the map, play the wrong note too many times, and you'll be dead. So she plays the wrong note a couple times. The stones around them all crumble, so they have no way out. And it comes down to the last set of notes she has to play, and she can't figure out if it's A sharp or B flat. And here's old Mikey. Don't worry, if you play the wrong note, we'll all be flat.
Yeah, that's
That,
a good one.
that's a dad joke Hall of Famer right there. Probably inappropriate at the time, but it was still picture perfect. They go through. There's this massive water slide with running water that's coming from who knows where. They end up in this big other set of caves, and they find One-Eyed Willie's ship.
Mm-hmm.
We'll get to some other stuff that kind of happened in there in a minute, but they found the ship. One-Eyed Willie's pirate ship is real. It exists. They get on the ship and they're exploring. They find obviously dead bodies, and there's a pirate with 2 knives or 2 daggers stuck in his eyes. Mikey ends up busting through the floor and finds Willie's cabin. He has a little conversation with Willie. Basically tells him he beat him. He knew Willie was waiting for him. So they start loading up everything they can get because there's just treasure all around. There's gold doubloons and rubies and pearls and diamonds and necklaces and who knows what. They're putting it everywhere. And Mikey comes up with a plan because the Fratellis are still chasing him. Hey, we'll take some jewels, we'll lead it into one cave, and we'll go in the other cave. When they go in that cave, then we can make a run for it. But the Fratellis were there and hurt him. And so now they're there and they tie the kids up, and Dada tries some of his inventions again. His chattering teeth end up biting one of the Fratelli brothers in the testicles, which looked like it hurt. Joey Pantalone, who plays one of the Fratelli brothers. And so eventually they get tied up and they make them walk the plank. Now, here's another thought. When Josh Brolin's character ends up running to go save Andy, right? The young girl who had to go walk the plank.
Yeah.
And he has to walk by Ma Fratelli, right? Who's facing away from him. And he just pushes her to the side to go jump in the water. Why did he not push Ma Fratelli into the water? She's like 80 years old. I'm pretty sure she doesn't have great center of gravity, and she doesn't have a lot of balance. If he would have pushed her over, she probably would have drowned. Half of this wouldn't have had to happen. One of the greatest parts of the movie happens. Sloth and Chunk catch up, which everybody catches up pretty quick in this movie. Maybe because they didn't have to worry about all the booby traps. But,
true.
He yells out the great quote, "Hey, you guys," and does his Errol Flynn impersonation and grabs a knife and goes down one of the sails and frees the kids, and they get away. And eventually they end up making it out. He beats up his brothers because, one of the things do you see the Superman shot out in there?
Yes. Yep. So I was going to point this out too. He rips off his shirt. Sloth does. He has a Superman shirt underneath, and they start playing the Superman theme.
Yes.
And yes, that's Richard Donner filmed Superman 1, and he did number 2 as well. But so a nice little shout out.
And one of his brothers knew it too. He's like, "Oh, we're in deep trouble now."
Yep.
He beats his brothers up. He doesn't like his mom because she starts singing "Rockabye Baby." And I guess she dropped him a lot as a kid, and that's how he ended up deformed. And that brings back traumatic memories for him. So the kids make it out. They realize that their candles are dynamite when they're trying to make it out. They blow a hole in the rocks, but it starts collapsing. Sloth saves the day because he's immensely strong, as all mentally and physically handicapped people are in these movies. Right? Him and Sloth have a little bromance moment. They love each other. The kids abandon them on the beach. Cops find them. They start telling stories. They find the Fratellis. They arrest the Fratellis. Our evil duo who need the paper signed for the foreclosure come up. Dad's about to sign the paper. The housekeeper who speaks Spanish shows back up. and she's going through the kid stuff, finds a bag full of jewels, and apparently that's enough for him to rip up the papers and say he's not ever selling his land. Which that's not how foreclosure works, dude. There's still like processes and court things, and like if it was supposed to happen the next day, just because you have a bag full of jewels doesn't mean like your land's not going to get foreclosed on. Like it still is. Um, Movie ends. They see the pirate ship off in the distance sailing away. Before we get to some other stuff, what's up with Chunk just telling Sloth he can come live with him?
Yeah, didn't talk to his parents at all. He's like, "You're gonna live with me now,
Yeah,
Sloth."
I'm gonna take care of you. First of all, he's a human being. He's not a pet, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Two, hey man, like your parents gotta pay for this stuff. Like, not only is it just another mouth to feed, and this dude looks like he can put the food away,
Mm-hmm.
but now you got to figure out the physical and mental and rehabilitative help you're gonna have to give this guy to reintroduce him into society, and medical help. Like, dude, no man. Like, I know you like this guy, but hey man, you guys visit each other or something, but you can't just tell him you can come live with us. Like, whoa, what's going on here?
Yeah, right after the credits roll, his parents are like, "Whoa, we did not agree to this."
We need to have a talk, young man. Um, so one of the things, the media shows up at some point during the end of this, and they're talking
Mm-hmm.
to him. And do you remember Dad talking about an octopus? You made a comment about an octopus.
Vaguely.
So one of the deleted scenes, there was a giant octopus when they first ended up where the pirate ship was
Oh,
that
really?
attacked them, and that they had to like fight off.
Wow.
Um,
No, I didn't see that.
well, it's one of the deleted scenes. So
No,
like you
but I
gotta
mean,
have
like,
the
I
yeah.
didn't see
Oh.
like, oh, you know what? Now I think I see on the wiki about it, but at first I didn't see that.
Let's see, what other notes do we have? So Sean Astin, they let him keep the treasure map used in the film, right?
Mm-hmm.
Cool. That's a great prop to have. His mother is Patty Duke.
Yep.
So many years later, she finds it, thought it was just a random wrinkled piece of paper, threw it away.
No, that's awful.
The pirate ship was real. They made a real pirate ship.
Oh yeah, it looked like a real thing. You know what? That's probably cheaper than what they would do to CG it now, anyway.
They filmed everything on the ship that they needed.
Yeah.
After the film, it was offered to anyone who would take it. No one wanted it, so they had to scrap it. It was a 5 month production. They mostly shot it in sequence, which
Oh,
is
that's
not something.
interesting.
Yeah, you don't
Yeah,
really
it's not
see that a
typical.
lot. Um, so the cast did not get to see the pirate ship before they shot the scene and first saw the pirate ship in the movie.
Wow, that's cool.
Um, Richard Donner wanted genuine reactions to the size and scope. When he did see it, Josh Brolin was so surprised he exclaimed, "Holy shit!" And they had to reshoot the scene because of that.
That's funny.
There's some swearing in this movie.
Yeah, there's tons of shits in this movie. I'm surprised they wouldn't just keep that then.
All right, but here's the thing about it. It was deliberate, strategically placed so it can be easily drowned out by broadcasters who wanted to remove it. So if you ever watch the movie again, there's a lot of background noise or other stuff going on when people do swear or running water or something. So that way, whoever's broadcasting the movie, like if they're broadcasting it on like TBS or regular TV, they can just fiddle with the sound mix for a little bit and a couple seconds of footage, and you're not really cutting anything out, but you can drown out the profanity.
That's interesting. Yeah, because some shows, some movies will have like dubbed lines. Like I know, like in Back to the Future, they like dub in something else for like when they're crashing into the manure. You know, like they'll like do that type of thing where it's like
Yeah.
dub in something else. Sometimes some movies, like Super Bad, actually filmed different takes with different words, so that
So
way
they
if it was
could,
ever played on TV, it doesn't mess with you in the sense of like you can obviously tell when it's dubbed or like
Yeah,
dropped. Dropped is what they when they just dip it. Like
yeah.
mute it for that 1 second or whatever. But yeah, so some places have gone above and beyond with that kind of stuff.
And then there's some where whoever is showing the movie makes, I don't want to say horrible choices, but like you can just like they just put weird stuff in place of it. Like Die Hard is one of them. Yippee Ki like so like the perfect thing like with Brooklyn Nine-Nine, Boyle when he did his version of it would when he I think what he say Yippee Ki mother flipper or
Mm-hmm,
something like
mm-hmm.
that. Like that's something that like would end up on TBS or TNT or something.
Exactly.
Where they do it. So the house in Astoria, Oregon is real. That is an actual house. So a while back, somebody bought the house, and people eventually found out where the house was, and people would go to the house. Now, I don't know if the people who owned the house knew it was the Goonies' house when they bought it. So I've seen different stories on that. Like some say yes, they knew it was a house from the Goonies when they bought it. Some didn't. Now, I understand it's your home and you want to have a sense of privacy. But if you buy something and you know that's what it is, not that your privacy needs to be invaded, but you have to expect some weird things to happen. Like, somebody owns the house from A Christmas Story and turned it into a museum so people can visit it. Every year people will go to Astoria, Oregon. I think at like the 20th and 25th anniversary of the movie, like Astoria would host these like huge displays of the movie, right? 10, 20,000 people would go up there to go watch the movie in Astoria, right? And it's probably people my age because we're old as hell and like it means something to us. And people would go by the house and people didn't like that people were coming by their house and wanted to go see it. But eventually someone else has now bought the house and they're trying to turn it into the same thing like a museum. So
Oh, cool.
fans of the movie can go and see it. So hopefully maybe they can get some props, put it in there, right? Maybe they can put like a Rube Goldberg type thing. They can kind of recreate that at the gate. You know what I'm saying? Like that would be cool for the fans who want to go see it. And then, they can find a way to donate the money to various causes or something. I don't know. But like I said, to me, that's one of those. If you know that's the Goonies house when you buy it, like to me, it's just weird to buy it and be like, I'm closing it off to everybody else who loves
Right,
this.
right.
But that's just me. Like I'm sure after like if somebody
Especially when you think you could probably make some money off of that fact.
like the capitalist brain isn't working in people, like oh man, we can charge like $5 a ticket to go through,
Yeah, and
or
then we can
whatever,
use
right?
that money to buy another house, and this will just be our museum, and then we'll have another house somewhere
Yeah.
else.
And then like you can like yeah you can do like screenings at the house of the Goonies and stuff like that. Like
Right,
I mean
right.
there's so many things you do. I don't know. But yeah, there was a lot of controversy for many years about the house, and
Mm,
it is now in a better, less controversial place.
nice. Yeah, I didn't know that this was filmed in Astoria till I just read that here. I was thinking this was just, so, look, I've been to a lot of the studio lots recently. Like I went to California and did like a WB tour. I did a Disney studio tour, and I did Universal Studios. And some of that looks really good, and you think, okay, like that could be a set. Like I thought maybe the jail thing was a set, but it was like a real building that they've now turned into like their film society film museum or whatever for Oregon. But that kind of stuff, I was watching this episode of Community recently where they do like these flashbacks of episodes we never saw. Do you remember that
Oh,
episode?
with like the where they were in the raft and Troy thought
Yes.
you could punch the raft and they would just like poke a hole in the
Yeah.
raft and they would skirt
And
across the
there's
lake.
one
Yeah.
where like they're building a house for Habitat for Humanity, and it is completely blown up and stuff. I've been there. It's actually in the backlot tour of Universal Hollywood, and it is just it is a set from the Tom Cruise film, the
Is it by the house from Psycho?
it's sort of near there, yeah. But it's like where this big airplane is laying, but it was also this house that was affected by it. And I was able to pause the video um of the community and look at my photos from when I went on vacation. I was like, this is the same exact house. But it's the house. What was the War of the Worlds or something? Right? Isn't that a Tom Cruise one recently, like a
Yeah,
remake?
that was another Steven Spielberg movie.
So it was that location on the Universal backlot that they filmed stuff for Community, and I think the raft part was the part where they filmed Jaws in the Hollywood lot.
Would they have the Bruce the mechanical shark there?
Yeah, yeah. So sometimes they just film these things like, and those are like maybe 100 feet away from each other. They're not like
Yeah.
very far, but no, I was actually amazed that this was all filmed on location. So that's pretty cool.
All
I
right.
mean, underground scenes were filmed in WB Studios, but you know, like like the actual big stuff in
Yeah. Astoria.
Oregon were filmed in.
So you wanted to talk about a sequel, right? And that has been something that's been on people's minds for years. How has there never been a sequel for the Goonies? Like, especially during the 80s where they were churning sequels out left and right. Back to the Future 2, 3, Gremlins, Gremlins 2, you know.
Especially like I guess too, like when we really look at sequels, there was a time when sequels had a really like bad run in, right? Like Jaws 2, Jaws 3, Jaws 4, where it was pretty much the same thing as Jaws 1, but just redone with a new cast. And it wouldn't even usually be the same director. It would just be, you know, a cash grab. It really kind of changed when Empire Strikes Back came out and was like actually one of those sequels that everybody was like, oh, this might be better than the first one. And then, you know, some of these movies like Back to the Future, like you said, 2 and 3, like they took the sequel aspect of that and like made it different, like made it a story and not just like do the same thing again,
Yeah.
but with, you know,
The
a new
Godfather, The
cast.
Godfather Part 2.
Right, exact. Godfather as well. So I I could kind of see where like if Goonies 2 came out, they may have like in the 80s may have messed it up and did like a whole new thing, or they been like, oh, we'll just take the same cast and do another story. That's I think what most people probably would have meant to see.
So, Richard Donner passed away in 2021. And that
Mm-hmm.
was one of the things he was asked about so many times was what happened? Is there ever going to be a sequel? And he's talked about it many times. Spielberg has talked about it many times over the years. Apparently, they had written a couple screenplays, they had written treatments, they had done all these different things. At one point, Warner Brothers just wasn't interested in doing a sequel. It just stuff just never got off the ground for one reason or another, and nobody could ever figure out why. Like, what was the, especially if Spielberg attached to it. Like, this is Steven Spielberg. Like, if he walked into, he could walk into any place and be like, I want to make a movie about this. Who's really gonna tell him no, right? But apparently people were. And it just it's so many things, and they had script. Like I said, they had so many screenplays and scripts that went back and forth, and they tried. Corey Feldman's been asked about it. Ewan Quay's been asked about it. Sean Astin's been asked about it, and a lot of them would have been up for it at various times. But one of the things that recently came about was at the Golden Globes this year. Ewan Quay was asked, and he said, unfortunately, because Richard Donner has passed away, his words were, he was the captain of our ship. I just don't see us making a movie without him. And that was one of the big things. Like, people would have been up for it if he was involved. And unfortunately, he never got around to making it before he passed away. And obviously I'm not involved in the movie and I'm not one of the actors, so I don't have the feelings. I still think it could be done and I think it could work. Sean Astin is old enough to be like a dad now. Or like how hold on, let me how old is Sean Astin?
52, I believe. I looked at it the other day.
Okay, so he could be a young granddad or an older dad, right? At
Hmm.
52. So it could still work. Like, okay, maybe you have because we're in the 2020s. Maybe you have these tech bros or something that are trying to scoop up the land and turn it into vacation properties. They're trying to do something with it, right? So once again, the area is being looked at as like people trying to buy it up. And instead of obviously Sean Astin probably can't do this stuff anymore, but him and his friends are still there. They have kids or grandkids or nieces and nephews, right? And maybe their nieces and nephews or kids have heard stories about this adventure that their, uncles and dads and moms went on, but no one would ever really talk about it, right? And maybe there's another tale, like, because look, One Eyed Willie kind of came from out of nowhere. Like, obviously, it wasn't a real pirate, but, so you make up another pirate who might have happened to have been stealing treasure and doing piratey things, and they can have to go find, So you wouldn't even need necessarily the original cast in it. It could kind of be like a legacy series. You can have them playing the same parts, maybe as an older age, just to have cameos or small pieces in it. Maybe Chunk is like the chief of police now, right?
Right.
Um, you know, Mike. Who knows what Mikey's doing, or or Mikey's running historical society or something. Mouth is doing something, and maybe he ended up married to the girl that him couldn't get along. Like, but there's a lot of things you
Yeah, yeah.
could do where they could just have bits and pieces. They wouldn't have to be totally involved in it, but just enough for old people like me to be like, hey, yeah. But you can still create a new story and a new adventure with a younger set of kids.
Hmm.
But I don't know. I just don't know because it's one of those apparently like they don't want to ruin the legacy of the movie. So that's one of the things that's kind of stopping it right now.
I always find that an interesting thing because with how many sequels get made nowadays and stuff, do they really ruin the legacy of something? Like, if I don't like a sequel, a lot of times I just like tune it out and just say, "All right, I'm only watching the first one." You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't sit there and think like it ruins anything.
Okay, maybe it doesn't ruin the legacy, but like okay, take RoboCop. The original
Hmm.
RoboCop from the '80s was badass, right? Pretty awesome. I had a couple middling sequels or whatever that weren't that good, but the original one was pretty good. When they came out with the new one, it wasn't so good. So especially like you can't like you've just killed it because you can't do anything with it going forward. So you can't make any new sequels, right? Um, it's one of those. The
Well, here,
legacy of the old one is still there, but for anything new.
what they really got to do, Casey, is actually take the time on these sequels and reboots, and not just try to rush them out there and trying to capital on like, oh, this is a project we haven't touched in 20 years. If they actually made these things with love and care at times, then it would be a lot easier. Like, you might win some goodwill, even if it's not a financial success. It might be enough goodwill that people become another cult classic. Instead, it's like, oh, that thing sucked. I'll go back to watching the first one again.
Okay, so two things. One, as right as you are, unfortunately, if it's not a financial success, like
Yeah.
these executives don't care. Number two, how did you feel about Indiana Jones,
Which one?
the newest one? When you when
I
you,
liked it.
but what I'm saying is like when you look at it in that aspect of something that hasn't been touched, because I didn't think Crystal Skull was that bad.
Me neither. Yeah, I liked
Now,
Crystal
in
Skull.
all fairness, that was the first Indiana Jones movie I had ever seen.
Hmm.
I've since seen Raiders of the Lost Ark and everything else. I've seen Last Crusade and all those afterwards. It doesn't. Crystal Skull doesn't measure up to those, obviously,
Right, right.
but I still thought it was fairly good in its own right. But that one kind of tarnished Indiana Jones for how long? where it took them, this long to even make another one.
15 years, yeah.
And so
But
there's some.
my point with that though is like, let's ignore Crystal Skull because I that was made by the same people, so I do think they had the love of it there. But when you look at executives that just say, okay, we have this franchise, and some of them get real confusing now. Like, look, I've never seen any Terminator movie. All right, so that might be coming up sometime on here. Never seen one, right? But I do know how confusing that series can be because I know people like the first two, and then
Three
they
was
they did a third one, and then now they've done like three other ones, and
yeah,
they're
it went
like,
off the
well,
rails.
yeah, and when they do those, they always say, well, we're ignoring the fourth one and we're going to make this fifth one, and then the fifth one doesn't do well, and they do the sixth one and they're like, well, we're ignoring 4 and 5 and we're doing our, and it's like, just
Then
if
they're
you take
creating
your
alternate
time,
timelines. Yeah.
right, time with it, you don't have to worry about rebooting every 10 years, and just like let's not, they're just pushing it out to keep the franchise and get it out there again, and they think it'll make money. And when it doesn't, they say, well, now we have to act like those don't exist and do it again. And they still rush them out at times. It's like, just like get it right the first time and then worry about making a sequel to that one, you know?
Look, I agree. Like I said, I think for me this is such a beloved classic movie that you have. I mean, you have parents and grandparents and uncles and aunts and stuff who share this movie with the children in their lives, right? Now, who knows if the kids like it? I'd like to believe they do, but you never know, right? But I'd like to think if they took their time, and like I said, even if it's not the same story, but I think that's the only way to go with it is kind of a story similar to what I just said, where you can still have Sean Astin and Corey Feldman make an appearance or two in there to play Mouth and their parts, but pass it on to a younger generation of Goonies who are, doing their thing. Where it can be enough to where it can move. It can be enough to where it'll get old folks like me into the theater to watch it, and it could be enough to get a younger generation in to watch it as well.
Yeah, I think this is actually a movie that doesn't need a sequel at this point. What you're running when you do those and you just say, "Oh, here's their kids," it kind of runs into a. Sometimes they just kind of redo the same story beats, but like a newer
Yeah.
generation of kids, and then that way they're trying to then be like, well, then we'll make a sequel to this one because we'll have these kids locked down for 3 film contracts or
Yeah.
so I think it's fine if they kind of just leave it alone. I think the best time to have done one would have been in the 80s when you get the 4 kids together again and do a whole nother story where they find something else. Doesn't have to be pirates, it could
Yeah.
just like another fun adventure thing. But I think at this point, and even talking about it, like it looks like some of these things were as of like the 2010, 2008, talking about maybe getting
That
together. At that point, I think they kind of missed the boat.
that ship has sailed.
Yeah.
Uh, I mean, okay, so some of them have gotten together during the pandemic. They did a couple of read-alongs or watch-alongs to reading the script and everything to raise money for charity and to do some various things, which were well received. But yeah, like I said, even once Richard Donner passed away, I think that pretty much probably put the nail in the coffin.
He was 91 too. I don't know if he's directing Goonies 2 at age 92.
Well, I'm not saying. I don't know. You never know. You're probably right, but you never know. Like,
Yeah. Um, okay. Was there any memes that have come from this movie? So, like I said, I've seen the GIF of full. Um, the "Hey You Guys" I knew from that weird, was it Regal or AMC thing?
yeah,
Regal, I think it is, where they're like just shouting the movie quotes as they're all going to the theater or something. That's what I knew it from.
there really isn't. Maybe just some stuff from Chunk or Sloth, but no, no major memes that like have stacked up to Travolta or anything like that.
I will add here that I have an experience with the Goonies 2012. Okay, there was a there's a Major League Soccer team called the San Jose Earthquakes. For that year, really good. They're usually not. They were really good that year, and they was really late, or they would tie the game very late, like 90 plus minute, scoring at a crazy goal. And they called themselves the Goonies because they would always say like Goonies never say die. So they were that's what they were known as in 2012. So I kind of have sense with the film through that, but not like I'd never seen it, but I knew what they were referring to. But that's like the only thing close to a meme that I could think of, even though it's not a meme. But like it was something that was in the the soccer sphere when I was following along with it. But yeah, um, ratings. You wanna give me your rating? Let you go
So,
first.
like I said, this is one of my all-time favorite movies. I've watched this as a kid, teenager, an adult. I've watched this more times than I can count. When I watched it this morning, as we're recording this, I had a smile on my face the entire time. When I watched the Goonies Are Good Enough video from Cyndi Lauper, I had a smile on my face the entire time. For me, this is a 5-star movie. This is one of those that I may not watch it a ton, but I can watch. Like, I may get in a weird mood and be like, "Oh, I want to watch the Goonies today," and I can just pop it in, and it's great. And it just, like I said, it could just be nostalgia, and I'm willing to admit that. But for me, it's a classic.
I rated this one. I've been rating them all on Letterbox. It's out of 5 stars. Um, I haven't put Airplane in the playlist, like my list that I have, just because I'd already seen it. So my list I'm gonna make is only for my first viewings on these.
Ooh, okay,
And so Pulp Fiction was a 1,
yeah.
right? 1 or 1.5. I think it was 1. Goonies I have as 3.5 stars out of 5. Um, I enjoyed it. It is dated at times, right? But so I think kid me probably would have loved this a lot. Adult me, I really did enjoy it. I thought the music was great. I thought the kids had this dynamic that was fun. Um, uh, I didn't really care for the Fratellis that much, and I think that's kind of what dragged it down a little bit for me. Um, but yeah, it's 3.5 out of 5 stars. So this is the first time I'm rating something very positively on the podcast. It hits different. And now I have to make my pick, and I've been going through this all day, really back and forth all weekend. I have a few thoughts here, right? So I could go with another classic 80s movie to kind of keep in with our theme this week. Or I can continue with Sean Astin, and we can talk about a Sean Astin trilogy that you haven't seen. Or I'm getting ready to talk some Star Wars when Ahsoka comes out. I might be leaning Rogue One here, which I saw you haven't seen. So I'm kind of like in this, like, and then I also have another comedy that's kind of like Airplane, but with Weird Al. So I'm like playing 4 in my mind right now, and I'm debating which one I'm gonna go with. But I think I'm gonna end up going with. Let's go Star Wars Rogue One. It's
Okay.
on Disney Plus. For people who don't know, I'm gonna set it up for you here. It takes place right before Episode 4: A New Hope. So just going in knowing that, that's all you really need to know. It's a pretty good standalone film too. If you haven't seen any Star Wars, I would say you could probably watch this, no problem. Um, yeah, definitely. I know people that have probably only seen this when it first came out and then went back and watched them. So I'll go ahead and set us up with Star Wars Rogue One. It's on Disney Plus. It's actually called Rogue One: A Star Wars Story, but there you go. It came out 2016 December. I saw it in theaters a couple times, and I really enjoy it. So I'm gonna see. I think we'll go more modern this week because we've been all in the past. So this week I'm gonna go modern, and then maybe I'll go back to the past for the next ones. Any thoughts on that pick, Casey? Before we wrap it up here.
No, this is one of those that I actually own and I haven't watched, which I don't know why I do that, but I do.
I do it too. I buy movies cheap at times, and I haven't watched them.
It's been something that's been on my radar. I've been meaning to watch it. I just never, I don't know, never had the thought or just be like, oh, let me put. Maybe it's because of where it falls in the timeline.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like after 3, right before 4, and it's one of those like if I'm gonna do that, I might want to do like a Star Wars marathon, like I did with Marvel, with the Infinity Saga. But like now it's not as much as Infinity. But that's 9. Hold on, that's 3, 6, 9. It's at least 10 movies I'd have to watch.
Yeah, 11.
What's the other one?
Solo.
Yeah, so I'd have to watch, which I own that one too, but I have to watch 11 movies, and then I got to figure out. The weird thing with that is, I figure out what order do I want to watch them in. Do I want to watch them in release order,
or chronological?
Do I want to watch them in chronological order?
Machete order, which some people do with Star Wars.
Yeah, is that because that one's like 4, 5,
4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 6.
Yeah.
Preserve the Darth Vader reveal in 5 for first-time viewers. It's pretty much all it is. But pop culture, you pretty much know who Vader is.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen a good number of them, and I know who Darth Vader is. So it's not a big deal, but like I said, it's like, with the Infinity Saga, I could have went chronological, but that would have been too much, and it was just easier to put the disc, grab the disc as they, for the order of when they were released, and just go from there. And it was great. But like I said, if I'm gonna do a Star Wars one, I got to make that decision. That's a lot to weigh. And then,
and for people that like Rogue One, if you end up watching it next week and you really dig it, there is a Disney Plus show now called Andor that spins off of one of the characters, and it is really great. Like, we're talking about, it is high budget, high quality. Like, it's amazing. 12 episodes, first season. It's fantastic, and it's going to wrap up with season 2. But so if anybody really digs the vibe of Rogue One, definitely, if you're like, oh, but I don't like traditional Star Wars, but I liked Rogue One, Andor is like the next step you would take on that. But yeah, so I'm excited to get your thoughts on it. I would say you don't have to watch any of those in an order if you don't want. You could just
I'm saying like that's if I was gonna do a Star Wars marathon like that. Like, okay,
but I do like chronological for people that haven't seen, or even people that have seen and you want to watch them all. I think chronological is really fun. I'm actually wearing my Rogue One shirt today too, so that kind of put me on the tipping point of I think I'm leaning that movie today. But yeah, so we'll be back next week. We will talk Rogue One, a Star Wars story. Like I said, it's on Disney Plus. Casey, in his wisdom, has already purchased it, so he will just watch it on his disc, I assume. And we'll catch you next week with some Star Wars.